Good morning, everybody, and a big warm welcome to Mark Plettenberg from Login VSI, who's going to talk us through how to have fun with app layering. Two concepts that everyone associates together, but I'm sure Mark will be educating us on how to achieve that. A quick reminder that you can ask questions during the session. At the top of the page, there's a Q&A button. So if you've got any questions for Mark to answer at the end, do submit them during his presentation. And also the session feedback as well. So if you want to get some extra points on the leaderboard, make sure that you submit your feedback at the top of the page after the session finishes. Okay, so on with the show. Over to you, Mark.
Yeah, thanks so much, Neil, for the intro. And you are right. You didn't know this next slide where it had quote unquote fun, but it fits exactly there. And my way of fun is really, or my way of having fun with something typically means that I break it first, sometimes beyond repair. Good thing with computers is that you can typically just reboot them, unlike my motorcycle or my house. But that's for another day. A little bit about me. I'm a product manager at Login VSI. Have been for most of my career, actually. I'm a user experience expert because that's what I've been doing for all of my career. I'm totally not a security expert. So a lot of things that I'm going to tell you today are very good for performance, are very bad for security. So if you think any of my ideas are good, just go to your security officer and he'll probably have a laugh at you, and maybe you can do half of what you want to do. And I've been professionally breaking things since 2008. And I just want to go through some stuff that I learned learning application layering, because this is one of those technologies I'd actually never touched before. And we were getting a lot of questions about. So I gave myself a couple of weeks and I actually did all of the application layering, not just Citrix, but also VMwares, Liquidwares. And boy, did I learn a few things. So what are we going to talk about today? First of all, we have the introduction that we're doing now. There's definitely not going to be marketing slides for Login VSI. We're going to talk about the performance of app layering, how you can do that in change management, some best practices, and of course, as Neil also said, there's a Q&A. I think it's on top of your screen. So if you have questions for me, just feel free to drop them there. And we'll get back to them. Now, I did say that there would be no marketing in this presentation. And there's no marketing for Login VSI, but I've been working on this idea that I actually like to sell. So if you are interested in a CD-ROM with conference sounds, I got you covered, because I miss getting out there, having a drink with people, shaking their hands. I'm one of those frequent flyers that goes all about doing this sort of stuff. So I thought by myself, how can I make the world a little bit more fun for me? So made a CD. It has categories for every mood. For example, presenters. Can you see my slides? Sorry, I'm a bit late. Oh, did I overrun my time? But also we have sounds for attendees. This lunch is horrible. Well, you're at home now, so you can comment on your own lunch, right? So we have more than 150 audio clips. If you are interested in this, it's only £59.95. Of course, very expensive shipping. The number is down below. So if you're interested in that, just give it a go. And let's hope we can all meet soon again in the future. If you are actually planning to learn something about about app layering, however, I recommend that you go to Jeff Pitch's app layering deep dive. So we did a few of these slides recently in a CUGC webinar for the whole world, and it actually inspired Jeff, where he was like, "Well, this is all fun, but he's going to do an actual deep dive." So I'm glad we actually inspire people, and he's going to really tear it apart and give you the inside scoop. Now, why are people looking into application layering? Well, first of all, we know from research, and you probably are all feeling this, that the size of the average VDI deployment is growing. And 84% of organizations have a complex technology stack. I consider application layering to fit in that complex stack. It doesn't make it easier. Now, we also know that if there are performance issues, in 76% of the cases, it is because of a change. So this is really important. So a lot of people think that application layering will just magically solve their performance issues, magically solve their compatibility issues. And while it can help a great deal, it is really something to think about. So how does it help you? And I think it's most importantly helping you with the number of changes. And we all know this, but since the last few years, the number of changes that you have to do as an IT admin has gone up dramatically. So wouldn't it be great if you could just layer everything and they don't bite each other? Well, in theory, right? Now, in the previous show that I did, I also asked the question, are you currently using application layering in production? So ask yourselves, how many percent of the people did you think answered that they are using this in production? This was a Citrix webinar, mind you. 41%. So it came to a little bit of a surprise to me that only 41% of the people who were joining a application layering webinar would answer yes here. But there's also still a lot of people looking into it. So especially for those people, there are some great tips in this webinar. If we look at the full market, Citrix layering is the most popular choice to date. So we've been doing this research since 2013, and every year, and you might have seen it, we ask admins, what are the technologies that you're using? Are you moving to desktop as a service now is a popular question. What are you doing there? Turns out Citrix layering is actually the most popular choice. Even more clear, if we move to people that are not using layering at all, we can see that Citrix goes up, VMware has gone down a little bit, and Liquidware is gaining a little bit of market. Now, the great thing is we ask 60 questions to about 695 IT admins globally. This report has just been released last Friday. So if you're interested in this sort of thing, I don't recommend you read this white paper, but because it's 75 pages. But we had people from 52 countries in there responding to questions, and it's a great reference to see what others are doing, and it might inspire you for the things that you can do in your environment. So it's available at vdilikeapro.com. It's for free. We do not have any commercial gains in this. It's Ruben Spruit, Christian Brinkhoff, and myself who are just doing this because we are very much interested in what is happening in the market. So go get your copy after this talk, of course. Now, another question that we had in there is, what are your most important initiatives for 2020 and 2021? And turns out, this didn't really come as a surprise to me. That desktop as a service is the big thing. I'm sure there are many people talking about this today also on this conference. Now, secondly, application container technology, not exactly application layering. We do think that this number is a little bit influenced by Christian's following, who is, of course, a Microsoft guy. But it's interesting to see that a lot of people are looking into this. And third on people's minds this year is Office 365. Downside of Office 365, you can't use it with layering. It's officially not supported, so you shouldn't do that. But back on topic, right? We were not going to talk about the market. We are going to talk about application layering. And I was a little bit confused. When I started to look at Citrix layering, I was under the impression it was all about elastic layers. That was the thing that I had in my mind. Now, it turns out there are really a couple of things in life where it actually helps if you read the manual. IKEA stuff, if you don't read manuals for IKEA stuff, you've probably experienced it. You're at step 13, you figure out that at step 3, you needed to place a screw somewhere. Now you can't reach it anymore, and you can start over again. Secondly, you need to read the manual if you're going to build this Millennium Falcon from Legos. I think it's 7,541 pieces. Yeah, you definitely want to read the manual for that one. And third on my list of things you need the manual for is app layering. Really, I didn't do this. It cost me a lot of time. I think most of people skip this, but this is one of those technologies you really need to do that. What you also need to do is install Microsoft Silverlight. Now, while I was making jokes about this to Rob Beekmans in the Netherlands, I'll save that for a few slides. That's a spoiler. I think I have a picture in there. Now, Silverlight is just one of those things you need. I think it's almost out of support, or just about. No, it's actually out of support since 2017. I have here in my notes. Edge doesn't even support it, but you are going to need this to run the management console. So this is one of those things. It's a quirk. Once you get past that, it's not all bad. Well, maybe you also need to get over your fear of Internet Explorer. But one of the things I did not understand before I started using the product, and again, that might have been in the instructions, but it's really how little the management appliance does. You can literally turn it off after you have created the packages and the layers. Either all of your apps will be baked into the image, or alternatively, they are being delivered via file share. And really all you need to manage there in the scenario where you maybe have shares for example, if you have multiple locations, is a policy where you point it to the right share. So it's really the management console. It's not an active component. So if you compare that to other layering technologies where this is really an active component, this is really only there to help you do your job, create the packages. From there on, just turn it off. You're going to be fine. It's not going to break. Um, like I said, I was talking to this and about Silverlight to Rob from Citrix in the Netherlands, and Rob has been very kind to send me a I love Silverlight T-shirt. You can see I'm wearing that right now. It's not even on the big screen. It's not the best to go to pubs and bars, I guess. But who knew this is the third time I'm actually wearing this T-shirt where it makes sense. So when he sent it to me, I thought it was going to be a one-time thing. 3 times, Rob. Thank you for that. It's great. So what did I do in layering? First of all, I created some images, right? Easy as that. I used Windows 10 1809 because we know that's the most popular choice now in the enterprise. Of course, I could have done this with 20H1 as well, but this is just what we went with. We installed some applications like Adobe Reader, a PDF printer, a Java application that allows you to mind map, and Microsoft Office. Now, again, Microsoft Office I did not deliver as a flexible layer, only as a complete image because it's not supported. Some great resources if you're getting into this, by the way, and we have already shared the slides so you can get this. There's a session from Citrix TV by Ron Oglesby. He actually mentions in there that you can turn the virtual appliance off. That's where I learned that. And if you want to do Windows updates, you really have to do in the OS layer. That were the key takeaways from me there. There's a great Citrix Tips webinar by Rob Zulawski and Dan Lazar. Dan is actually the product manager for layering, so some good information there. And of course, Carl Stelhout with all of his documentation tips there. So if you're looking into this, really take a peek at these guys, because you're going to have all the fun with, for example, applications like that are, for example, Java dependent, right? This is my mind map application. I try to run it. It misses Java while I was extremely sure that I did give that elastic layer to my users. And then the fun begins, right? Do you put it in the same layer? Are you going to fix what's wrong? And this is really where you need to have a little bit of a background in application packaging, maybe to help you out there. In this case, if you're running into this, just set the path variable and you're good to go. But it's just one of those things. It's not going to be something you're going to install on a Friday afternoon, and it's probably just going to work. Secondly, is it going to perform? So I set about making a test plan. First of all, I made a test environment with Windows 10 1809, no layering at all. That's our reference, right? We just want to know, hey, if I don't do anything to it, how is it performing? Secondly, I created a Windows 10 1809 image with just one merged layer. So all of the applications are put into the image and are run from there. Do we see a performance impact? Thirdly, I created elastic layers for the application. So all of the applications except for Office. And now we are going to look into how that performs on my lab. Now, for reference, my lab is a Cisco HyperFlex machine. I'm really happy that they sent it over to us. It's running VMware ESX with VMware Horizon View. I know I'm on the wrong show here, but I had to make a choice, right? I was comparing app layering versus app volumes and liquidware. So I can make choices in my lab. In this case, it rolled to Horizon View with Windows 10 and Office 2016. I'm pretty sure that the results will be similar when you're using virtual apps and desktops. However, make sure to double check that. So Windows 10 1809, no layering. For the people who have never seen a performance chart from Login VSI, this is what you get after the test. Horizontal axis, very simple, the number of users you tested with, 250 in this example. And on the vertical axis, the y-axis, we see the response times. And as you can see, the system gets a little bit slower as I gradually add more users. It does, however, not cross the red horizontal line that's at 2100 milliseconds, which would mean that the system is overloaded. So 250 users on this system with no layering, everything is going fine. This is a textbook example chart also. It's very smooth. There's probably no antivirus in here. There's probably no workspace managers, those kinds of things that can really kill performance in OneDrive. Now, secondly, Windows 10 with one merged layer. Now, again, I didn't know this existed before I started looking into this technology. And what it does, it actually takes all of your applications and it merges them within one disk. So knowing that, you could argue, hey, there shouldn't be any performance impact. And testing confirmed this. So this is what turned out to be a very boring test. Um, the theory was proven in practice. There is no performance impact if you use Citrix layering and you merge down the layers. Now, this is great. Again, didn't know this existed, and it's nice to prove that in practice. Now, a little question for the audience, and you can just answer this in your head, in your mind. Are you currently using Citrix layering with elastic layers? Now, again, when I asked this a couple of weeks ago in the other webinar, where we had 250 people, 73% of the people said no. That's really good because there is an impact on performance. 20% of the people said yes, and 6% said, I have no idea what you're talking about. That's the typical outcome after my webinars, by the way. Windows 10, let's look at what happens when we use elastic layers. We drop from 250 to 190 users, 190. So that's a significant impact, right? Now, the reason for this is simple, right? All of the actions that want to go to the file system are suddenly being redirected. Jeff Pitch in his webinar, I'm sure, is going to tell you exactly how that works. But it does have a drastic effect on performance. So that's quite interesting. Now, I also see that my baseline has gone up. Now, the baseline is the performance of the system when there's just a few users working. It's really not overloaded yet. This means that even when there's no stress, this machine now feels slower. So that's interesting. That's a metric you should really keep as low as possible. And mind you, I'm just publishing a few small apps here. I'm not publishing Office or anything that's a few gigabytes big. It's just a few hundred megabytes. And suddenly I drop from 250 to 190 users on my environment. That's quite significant there, actually. Now, if you want to be optimizing your own system, there's a few quick things that you can do. There's the VMware operating system toolkit, OSOT. There's the Citrix optimizer. There's a bunch more. Actually, my colleague Lorna is going to talk about that a little bit more this afternoon. But run either of these to make the performance of your system better. Now, let's look at the charts altogether. So no layering, to summarize, right? No layering, 250 users. Merged layer, 250 users. No difference there. Elastic layer, 190 users. With the baseline, we see the opposite. This number needs to be as low as possible. No layering, we're at 1140 something. Same with the merged layer because it turns out to be exactly the same. And then the elastic layer, we jump to 1400 milliseconds. So your users are definitely going to notice this. How are they probably going to notice this? Well, the most obvious thing is log-on times, right? This is one of the favorite topics to complain about because we do it so many times every day altogether. Let's see how my log-on times are when I'm not using layering. So you can see they're somewhere between 20 and 30 on screen right now. What if I use my merge layer? To no surprise at this point in the webinar, I guess that we know that the performance is about the same. What happens if I turn on some elastic layers? There we go. Boom, goes through the roof. Now, people will notice these differences. It's absolutely clear that something changed to the system here, even for users who are not even necessarily using elastic apps. So once you start using elastic apps in the images, this is what you are going to see. And your users might not be too happy about that. Now, I learned one more lesson, and just looking at the impact on application start times. So in this case, we're looking at Adobe Reader, where we can see that Adobe Reader is being delivered via an elastic layer. So the elastic layer is the dotted blue line, the merge layer is the continuous blue line, and the black line that's going up, the continuous line, is the number of users I tested with. So that's 250. And we plot this against time, right? How long does it take to start the application? We can clearly see that all over the line, Adobe Reader starts slower. This is no surprise, right? You get extra flexibility at a price. Now, this is the price you pay. I don't think this is too bad personally. There is a little bit of a difference when you are in the log on phase where users are still logging on to the system. But once you hit that mark here at 48 minutes where the log on phase has completed, we enter what we call the steady state, where the systems are cooling down a little bit again. We can see that the difference is very, very small. However, what surprised me is that when I looked at PowerPoint, and remember, PowerPoint is not being delivered elastically, it's just also part of that image, PowerPoint is also impacted. And this caught me off guard a little bit. So what happens is once you start doing elastic layers, for some apps, all of your apps get slower. And um, this is something that you might not expect. And these are the things that when I'm doing tests, I like to find out, right? It's the interesting part where, hey, how does this happen? Because at first I thought, even though you shouldn't elastically layer Office, of course I did that in some tests. I thought I assigned the wrong one, but it actually turns out that all of your apps are being affected if you do that. So Adobe Reader delivered flexibly impacts the start time of PowerPoint. Now, ask yourselves, how many applications do you have in your environment actually? Because if you're going to move all of these applications to elastic layers, of course, the problem is not going to get easier. When I did this recently, we see that most people are somewhere between 25 and 500 applications. And I have to say that the outcome of this is a little bit lower than what I typically see in practice. Working with larger organizations, I typically would say between 100 and 500 applications. And then the number doubles because they're not always aware of all the applications that are running, especially if you are using software as a service applications, for example, or shadow IT, as most people are doing right now in their homes. So this brings us to some conclusions. First of all, application layering can be done without performance impact. If you would have asked this to me a month ago, I would have laughed at you and explained to you why application layering would always have this penalty. And having had many talks about this also with Citrix product managers, they are going to try to make the world more aware of the fact that this flexibility is actually there, because it can be a great technique to explode your images and to make it easier to blow it to different platforms with the platform layers. Pretty nice. Elastic layers need to be used with caution, right? The more elastic layers you use, the worse performance will get. Also make sure that the file share that you throw the layers on has plenty of performance, or that you create multiple, or think about if you're doing a hybrid cloud scenario, maybe, where do you put your applications? Make sure that they are as close to the desktops as possible. And general advice, by the way, it also goes for data and other services. In practice, for performance, it doesn't really matter which layering vendor you use. So whether you go for VMware App Volume, Citrix layering, or Liquidware, performance is all about the same, except for the merging of the image. Citrix is the only one that can do that without a performance impact. So I found that a big plus for them. Last but not least, and I mentioned this quickly before, is make sure to get your VDI Like a Pro State of EUC report. Right, it's free. You can find all the marketing bits in there. Who's using Windows 10? What version of Office? What problems are you thinking about? I also want to thank the people who are probably in this webinar that have actually participated to that, because the most respondents we got from the United States, secondly, the Netherlands, and third, the UK. So again, people from the UK, thank you very much for filling that survey and helping us out, and get your free copy as a thank you. Now, we have a couple of minutes left. I don't know, Neil, if there are questions coming in.
Thank you, Mark. Let's have a look, see if we've got any. Don't see any on there at the moment. So remember, you can ask questions at the top of the page. There's a Q&A button there, and there's also a session feedback button there. So again, remember to leave your feedback for Mark.
Yeah, if you leave feedback, that gives you points on the leaderboard, right?
Exactly. And what do points make? You won't get that joke because you're not from the UK. going back to like late 70s television, where we had where we had a TV show that was where the catchphrase was "What do points make prizes?" But there are 2 questions apparently. I just need to figure out how I see them. Let's have a look. Q&A. Here we go. Okay, so can I ask how app layering has improved and what limits there are for the amount of layers? It's from Richard.
Yeah, so I don't know what the official limit of layers is. There is probably one, but I wouldn't try to find that limit because you will definitely hit performance bottlenecks before that. If you're merging the layers down, I think it matters that much. So you could go maybe even into the hundreds of layers. But elastic layers really just do it if there is no other way. If you're really solving a problem with it, then it's good to go for elastic layers. Other than that, just don't do it because it's really bad for performance. So in the theoretical limit, not sure.
Cool, thank you very much. And there was one more. Let's have a look. See if there's another question. I think we've got 1 minute left. Keep on time. Have you used Citrix app layering in Azure? I last used it a year ago, and you had to run some interesting PowerShell scripts to import the appliance.
Yeah, I actually use those PowerShell scripts as well, even on premises, because you can then use different generation VMs. So it works. It also works in Amazon, for example. But really, any environment, I think, where you can just throw a file share there, you could run these elastic images off as long as you inject the right registry keys into the target image. But yeah, be mindful of performance issues there as well.
Cool, thank you, Mark. So no more questions. So thank you very much for attending today. Remember, these sessions are available on demand. So if you submit your feedback at the top, we'll hand over to Jim for the next one.
Thank you.